guys, this is an absolute treat. This is so nice. Cecile, thank you for getting in touch as well. You kind of
Course.
you beat me to it. For sure. I loved it. Listen, it's been great because I had a lovely chat with Mr. McQuarrie about you all. So your ears must have been burning whilst he was just enthusing about
Mm.
all your amazing work. And can I just say huge congratulations on the film as well. I went back and saw it again on can't remember what day it was. But yeah, with my kids and my husband. And it's just so good. It's
Yeah, it's
so
a
good.
wild
Thank you.
film.
And it's great to go back as well because it's so packed that you kind of
Mm.
and it's so intense. It's nice to go back a second time with a kind of bit of an insight as to what you're going to go through. So you can really kind of pay attention to things as well,
Mm.
which was really, really great. Um I don't know where to start. I mean, I guess Cecile, I'm going to start with you because I love that McHugh kind of like he painted this lovely picture of you kind of going, they're ready.
Yeah, I heard that. That was very funny.
I love that. I love that image. It's
Yeah.
so great. How do
Yeah.
you guys, how are you, have you guys worked together? What's the kind of journey been, Cecile, with you and Alfie and Max?
Yeah, so I basically worked with both of them via Lauren, who I've worked with since Fallout, and Max was already working with Lauren back then. So from afar, since he was in LA and I was in London, we sort of collaborated in a sense. And then as time went on, we found ourselves working together a few more times. And then Alfie, I met on Top Gun Maverick. And yeah, so I was definitely familiar with them. Had not worked as closely as I did on this film, obviously, because it was in a different capacity. But yeah, so I was already familiar with them and their work, and yeah, from there we got to this collaboration, which was amazing.
Well, you have a great kind of insight into what's needed, in terms of what's going to be involved in terms of the creativity, the collaboration, the workload sort of thing as well. And what was it about them individually, but also them together that you felt was kind of was going to be the right kind of uh, collection of creativity to bring to this particular story and film?
Well, I know that they sent some music to McHugh, and so he was hearing that, and then he basically gave me a call and just said, "How do you feel? How do you feel about that?" And I said, "That sounds like a very good idea in terms of." It's like it's not a continuation of Lauren's of what Lauren has established, but they will be very familiar with how he works and what he has done in the past, so he will understand the vocabulary that McHugh has become not accustomed to, but really has come to really like and enjoy and really relate to for his filmmaking. So I thought that was a great idea in terms of finding some new, fresh vision, but also continuing with an overall vision that he had been establishing for the past couple of films.
Yeah. Where do you start, guys? What is, I mean, what's what was day one for you? What was day one on Final Reckoning for you?
Day one, I had moved to London, so it was everything was new. Literally everything was new and very exciting and scary. But day one was just sitting at the computer and at the keyboard and the piano and just saying, okay, I've done this before. I've just got to start. So
Yeah.
just using your instincts and as a pianist, just putting your hands down, starting improvising, and just see what happens. And it's just on a bigger scale where everything is more important. And just starting. And then at the end of day one, you have some music, and then you say, "Hey, Cecile, come have a listen to this. Alfie, come listen to this." And then we just start talking, and you just have to trust your colleagues and your instincts, and just see where it takes you and what feels natural.
And what are you reacting to, Max? Is it script? Is it, I mean, I know there's never a script, or is it
I, I,
Yeah, conversation? What is it? Yeah.
it was just conversation. Day one, we hadn't even seen the movie yet. We hadn't even seen a sizzle or a cut.
Wow.
So it's just thinking, okay, what would I want this score to sound like without me having seen the film? So just thinking, what's the Mission Impossible piece I always wanted to write, and literally just starting with that. And the first few weeks, I don't even know if a lot of that made it into the movie, but it's kind of just, clearing out the pipes, just thinking, what would I want to write? And then writing it. And then if some of it worked, great. And if not, at least I know I've tried that. And it's just going for it.
Yeah. Alfie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean that initial stage, it had a few events that kind of peppered it in my
Yeah.
memory. Firstly, was we had this amazing dinner with Tom Cruise and McHugh and Randy, and that was the first time we met Tom. Well, I met Tom.
Wow.
I mean, Tom and Cecile are firm friends by now, but so we got there, and I got there like 5 minutes early, and Tom got there 5 minutes early as well. So I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
hi,"
wow.
And it's
Small
like,
talk.
I know, right? And this like gorgeous restaurant in London, and we talked. And I mean, it was funny because we all were there. It wasn't just us; it was more of the team. Eddie was there
Yeah.
too, and I got aware in that point we were really being dropped into the middle of their process. They were still writing things, they were still shooting things. McHugh
Yeah.
and Tom were really intensely talking about things they're trying to figure out. So it wasn't like, okay, guys, your turn. Check in when the score's done, when you got an idea. We were kind of put in the whirlpool with them, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
Great way of
Um,
describing it.
yeah, yeah. And then we read the script, which was quite reading scripts or books that are based on the thing you're doing can be quite cruel because you score a thing that will just be thrown away in your head. You'll score it in your head and it gets thrown away completely once you actually see it. And
Yeah.
we started to see more and more of the film, and it was very long at that point. All the dialogue was in there, all the action, all the shots of the action was in there. It was this huge assembly with no temp. So yeah, me and Max and Cecile, we had to kind of feel our way through this very vast piece of work that, was in the middle of its process rather than at the end of it.
It's 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 interesting because like we were just so funny you were talking about kind of that of kind of being dropped into Tom's world almost in a way.
Yeah.
Um, I did this thing at the BFI a couple of weeks ago with him,
Mm.
and which I was so terrified about it, but I was really put at ease by how his people, the people that he works with, like publicists and stuff, how hands off they were, which was not what I was expecting. I
Oh,
was really
really?
expecting to be kind of almost micromanaged, going into it, and they were completely. There was a trust there, I guess, in terms of. And then, kind of having a similar thing where we had a kind of 10 minutes of kind of small talk before we went on stage. And he just had this ability to kind of put you at ease and just kind
Mm.
of, and his enthusiasm and clear, genuine love of what he does is
Yeah.
so infectious that it makes you want to do the best job that you possibly can. It's so weird to describe to people because someone said to me, "Oh, was he really Tom Cruise? Like being really Tom?" I'm like, "He is Tom Cruise. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
an on and off
Not
switch.
an act.
It's like there's no on and off. It's
No.
like
No, he is
that's
literally Tom
just
Cruise. Yeah.
yeah, that's him." And I think that that's why we get so connected to the films that he makes and watching him on screen because he's putting everything into it and expects that from everybody that he works with.
Yep.
Is that a
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. I mean, he's so enthusiastic and encouraging, and it's kind of his superpower. You leave conversations with him thinking, wow, I can do this. We could do this.
Yeah, I accept.
I
Yeah.
accept. Yeah, exactly.
I said to McHugh when we chatted that from the off we've got this kind of amazing rhythm that kind of just the way that we have the kind of the theme the way that you've chosen to kind of the tempo of that opening piece kind of really just like, oh, brilliant, here we go. Um, there are so many questions that I have that just are flooding my head, but that idea of you guys working together both in terms of kind of creating the music and using each other's strengths, in terms of bringing both your ideas to the table. How did that work? And then also, Cecile, I imagine you're very much part of that conversation as well, and being the kind of, almost like a triangle, I guess, in a way.
Well,
Don't
that
even know if
that
that was a question, to be honest, but yeah.
what's funny about the opening piece is that it's actually coming from something that we had found from for later in the movie, and it had such an infectious energy. It's the piece that opens us up on the establishes the arrival to Congo Yoa, where we're opening into the final act of the film, and that I remember that that rhythm was very much a demonstration of the collaboration between Alfie and Max, because Alfie wrote this suite that had a bit of that rhythm in it. It had a great shuffle and it had a great energy. And then we thought, what if we tried it on this scene? But then when we put it on the scene, it just needed a little bit more. So we added some more production, added some more rhythm, um, and some more layers, and added the orchestra that will eventually be on it. And then I think that in the soundtrack it's called Consequences. And then that became a cue that was approved. And then uh, Eddie and McHugh just randomly just said, can we just have the rhythm by itself? Just to play with it. It's just so good. And then they just put it on the at the top of the movie, and it was actually a really exciting way of
Mm.
finding the tone of the movie, which was yeah, he's done that each time on those mission films, this sort of extremely energetic way of getting us into the movie, whereas
Mm.
here we
Yeah.
go.
What I loved about this one was it gives you permission to have fun.
Yeah.
There's parts of the final reckoning that are kind of less serious in tone, than the previous missions that are quite like, come on, a bit more butch, and this one's a bit more like, gives you permission to enjoy and actually feel like it's an adventure movie. And to do that right at the front, I remember when I first heard it, I was really surprised and was like, really? That? And then I, understood it because it's very useful for setting the tone.
There's a story behind those drums, though, isn't there, in terms of that the types of drums in that piece. Is that right?
Yes, and I think one of the things that made this movie easier to score is that since it's an adventure movie, we were able to feature these colors in different locations. So these drums are Burundi drums, and since they're in South Africa, it was the perfect pairing to do something, roughly regional, along with this wild energy. So really, when we go from place to place, sprinkling these colors all around, it actually made the whole process even easier.
You obviously still have the bongos in there, peppered in that are
Mm.
present,
Hmm.
but not as much of the focus, which is sort of a way of staying in the vocabulary of mission, but also going beyond it.
Yeah. Um, it's so interesting you talking about this, the kind of the beginning of the movie and the idea that your music kind of helped them navigate the ending of the film as well. That was so interesting to hear them talk
Mm.
about, in terms of that, with music sometimes you can't put it into words. Sometimes it's just a feeling sometimes, and it sounds like that's kind of what it was for them in terms of when they put your music over, that Trafalgar Square scene. It's like, well, that's clearly like the ending sort of thing. That must have been amazing to kind of to hear that you're kind of helping sculpt it really in that way.
And
Yeah.
that's
Go.
why, sorry, Alfie, go
Oh,
ahead.
yours.
I was going to say that's why McHugh really likes to have composers involved early on in the film. Beyond the fact that he doesn't use temp, it also allows him to really experiment as much as
Mm.
possible, be it the music by itself, but also using the music to experiment with what he wants to do in the scene, and just making discoveries on both ends at the same time. So it makes it incredibly rewarding when those kinds of discoveries are made thanks to a piece of music that was written in isolation without the picture with not to picture, but they
Yeah.
make fit the picture eventually, and then you go back and forth, and it's a really beautiful teamwork where the editing works with the music, and then when the editing stops working with the music, then the music needs to work with the edit. And it's really a great dance, and having the
Mm.
time to do it is a great luxury, really.
Alfie, do you want to pick up what you were going to?
No, that's could have said it. Couldn't have said it better myself. You know, that part of the film, it had a piece of music there for ages, and we had the time to sit with it. And then actually, Tom Cruise had a note to make that feel. We wanted the audience to come out wanting adventure, wanting to go on their own adventure, not thinking these characters are just going to retire,
Yeah.
but going to continue, living in the shadows. So yeah, that was a result of us kind of being so immersed for such a long time.
The it's so funny talking about the kind of almost like cheekiness of the film in a
Mm.
way, sort of tonally, and a lot of that I think is between Tom and Haley's characters in particular, which I really like. Like even when she's handcuffed, in that scene, and then at the end, that end scene where there's no dialogue, it's just that look that you're like,
Mm.
oh my God. It's a really lovely thing to lean into, sort of thing. And I love that they kind of had that sort of playground with that as well. It's so great to watch the two of them. Um, and I can't believe he said that was like her first. She didn't like almost doesn't know when she filmed that, like almost didn't know that whole journey to get in there. That blew my mind.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Because
the meaning you
it's,
can find from looks.
yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
It was pretty astounding to see McHugh kind of do almost what like a Mike Leigh would do, or kind of experimental theatre where you kind of rehearse and experiment all these strands of story, but to do that in the biggest blockbuster production
yeah.
possible, it's scary because it's got to all come together, and you're not sure how and when that will happen, but it always does.
What about those massive kind of big sort of, they're not set pieces, but those big kind of moments. And I mean, there's so many big moments in the film, but in particular, thinking about the submarine section and then the biplane sort of section. But the submarine in particular, just the guttural nature of what we are hearing and what's making us feel that kind of almost claustrophobic nature of the environment that he's in. Do you mind talking a little bit about the ideas and coming up with the ideas for that and the journey actually, I guess, to getting to that point to working out what was going to work for that scene for the submarine scenes?
Uh, I can take this one. In terms of the overall story that we went through, well, we knew that it had to be very unique from the get-go. McHugh said it had to be its own sonic world, and just knowing that it's still so much. There's still so much choices in terms of what you can do musically with. Is got to be different.
Hmm.
Um, so we went through lots of experimentation, a lot of research. Both Max and Alfie just really just dug into all these types of different sounds. We experimented with slightly more electronic sounds, but that just made it feel too almost science fiction, which was not at all the emotion that you wanted to get. It
Yeah,
needed to be completely rooted in reality. Um, I also tried to source some sounds from crystal bechet and glass harmonica, which are quite very interesting sounds, but they were
yeah,
too small, too thin, and we needed something that had proper weight and size and
yeah.
just to match the incredible scale of what they had shot with that huge submarine. And so McHugh actually brought up this instrument that he found online on in random YouTube videos, the space bass, that this woman, this musician, had created herself, Constance Demby, and she built this huge metal instrument with rods and a huge a bended sheet of metal that she would play with mallets or a bow and got incredible sounds just in that small YouTube video. He said, "This is for me the submarine," and
Huh.
I thought this is difficult because we, with a bit of research, found out that she sadly passed away, and we thought, oh no, this is so unfortunate. How are we gonna get to this instrument? And with a bit of extra Googling and going down a rabbit hole, I found her label, who passed me on to the person who was handling her estate, and he put us on to this album that she had recorded of just Space Base, which was just a wealth of sounds. Um,
Wow.
and we got those files thanks to him, and it really just opened up a whole world of a bass, basically a sonic bass for us to
Yeah.
work from, and then musically build upon it. And then another discovery was the use of Russian throat singing, which was all this very, very low men singing in the absolute lowest octave. And that just, while being real, was also a bit more unreal than what you're used to hearing. So it was sufficiently otherworldly for it to work. Um, and then I think, other than that, there were lots of suites that both Max and Alfie had written, and because this sequence was quite long, it sort of became this sort of ever shifting piece
Mm.
that was quite had lots of moving parts, and just used choir in fairly dissonant cluster ways that had slight hints of melody that you can hear. You can even hear the mission melody hidden in there, but it's just sufficiently hidden that it evokes it without really stating it. There's
Yeah.
also a little bit of plot theme. We use these low woodwind instruments that, in order to hide that they were real instruments, we just filtered them, put lots of reverb on them, and they just don't sound real anymore. They still have a human quality to them because of the breath
Yeah.
and the air going through the instrument. So all of those elements became this sound palette that we were using, and then McHugh would pick up on this one sound, and he said, "Oh, I love that sound. Can we use it when this happens?" And it was, yeah, it was basically this toolkit that we shaped around this entire sequence, which changed a lot over time because they had filmed so much incredible footage in that tank, that it was hard to pare it down to something that was uh, playable in a feature film, basically, not as a film of its own almost. But yeah, so that was incredible, and just how much research and how much each of us was able to contribute to build this whole sequence.
It's like almost being given a like a been put on a treasure hunt in a way of kind of
Mm.
Exactly.
trying to
Yeah.
find something that connects in a way, and then you get to play with it and you get to create. And do you love that side of it, Alfie and Max?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you got to dig through a lot of dirt to get through the treasure, so that part could be a bit unforgiving.
Yeah. Max?
I like that part, but what I like even more was the plane scene because I loved the challenge of that and the need to create a piece of orchestral music that would work with the most stunning images you've ever seen on film. There's never been anything like that.
Mm.
So I preferred the deep, deep technical and creative challenge of how do I write a piece of music that has chords and melody that works with this absolutely mind-blowing scene.
Mm.
And that was, in my opinion, the hardest part of the movie by far. And to even get one piece approved or to generate interest by McHugh for anything in that scene took like 7, 8 months. And we tried for so long, like every few weeks, I would say, let me try one other thing. Then we'd look at it and we'd go, okay, I mean, it kind of works. And I wrote a few versions, like 5 minute, these massive pieces. Cecile and I would be sitting there and show Alfie, and we go, okay, well, does this work at all? And then it would just kind of become a wash, and McHugh would just kind of not really be interested in it. So we had to do it piece by piece and just cue by cue, and we had to spot it through writing for it to see, okay, we have to make a mini film out of this 15
Yeah.
minute sequence. And we learned first off that a lot of short strings and a lot of rhythm was not going to do the job. This was not a regular action scene where you could do lots of percussion because once the planes are in the air, to have anything fast started to make it feel slow. So we're sitting there going, God, how do we make an action scene out of this? So we figured that we had to write these chord progressions that were a bit dissonant and the strings had to be soaring up high. And then we couldn't have the strings go down at a certain moment because then it felt like Tom was going down, but he's not. He's going up. So it's just this wild puzzle of writing music that makes it feel like it's soaring, but it's also dangerous. And then once he's in the canyon, like what do you do there? And we wrote many different types of pieces and digging deep into at least what I thought classical repertoire could work. Like what melody works here? And then what we did was we drew back on what we did for the first trailer, the first teaser trailer, and we resurrected this piece called On the Edge that we
Mm.
had written. And then we did a new variation of it. And then all of a sudden we sat back and thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And we slowly solved each little bit of that plane sequence one by one, and then going forward and forward. And then as we got towards the end, McHugh said, I don't think we need music for this part of the biplane. And I kept saying to Cecile, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't think so.
I don't believe you.
And then we actually had to solve the climax of the plane before we could work backwards and solve what was the most difficult part, which was the when Tom is being messed around on the wing.
Mhm.
That was the hardest because we always thought, oh, it would be some climax, it would be some
Yeah.
incredible musical piece, but we realized that once the end was solved, we could work back and say, oh, we're going to use these wild dissonant swells only on the wide shots because once we're up close on the wing, we could use sound effects to feel like Tom is being punished on the wing and the pain of that. And coming to that solution, that was an 11-month process.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. What
Yes.
about the Gabriel payoff though? Oh,
That
that
was
is just
amazing.
that was amazing.
Yeah, that was just brilliant.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear everyone go, oh, in the synth bar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There
totally.
were
doesn't
many
get old.
versions where McHugh he kept saying, "I don't feel Gabriel's arm breaking," and once we found it, it was like, "Oh yes, now you can without hearing it or just by hearing the score, you can hear the moment his arm breaks."
Attention to detail. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But then you kind of have that whole thing where you go from this kind of, like you're talking about these huge kind of moments, and then you have like another sunrise, which is the most beautiful piece. I absolutely adore that. It's gorgeous. I mean, for people who haven't given themselves the luxury yet, the soundtrack's like over 2 hours long, in terms of 2 hours worth of music, which
Yeah,
is
and
just
Yep.
it's not
a
everything still.
gorgeous gift. Yeah, I imagine
Mm.
there's a lot more. Looking forward to the bonus version. But Another Sunrise is an absolutely stunning. I mean, it seems very simple. I imagine it wasn't so simple. And sorry, I don't mean that disrespectfully by saying
No, no,
simple,
no.
but that the emotion in that as well, and that where that's placed within the film, it's kind of like you feel it as the audience member, in terms of kind of what the part that it plays in the storytelling.
Yeah, completely.
Was that an easy one to come up with?
It actually
Nothing
Wow.
was easy. Sorry, go ahead, Cecile.
No, I was just gonna say that it's beautiful because the most deceptively easy pieces
Yeah,
are not all easy
I
to
bet.
come by. But what was great is we had this piece of music which was called Reaching. It was a suite that McHugh absolutely loved. When we first sent it to him, he it was I sent it at the end of our day, and so we all went back home and had dinner and all that, and then he started texting us and he said, my God, this is absolutely amazing, I love this piece. and um but it was actually tough to make it fit. We did find a few piece bits of the film where it fit, but it was such an amazing piece of music that has such scale. that in order to really make it work inside of the film, we had to find variations of it that would make it fit particular
Mm.
moments of the film. And when I heard this particular variation, I remember we had a review with McHugh, and I said, I'm just going to play you this. I think I know where it should go, but I'm just going to play it to you with no picture. And he said, okay, I heard this, great. Let's see where you thought. And then we played it on that beautiful montage of
Mm.
the past Mission Impossibles, and it just had this heart to it that was just pure. um this is what Ethan has gone through, and this is what
Mm.
he sacrificed, and it had a raw tenderness and emotionality to it that was very beautiful.
What what's that, you talking about, we all went home after a day and had dinner and stuff. Is it like a, not like it's a 9 to 5 job sort of thing, 'cause it's clearly not.
Nope.
But when you are all, are you describe a kind of, when you are coming together to work on it, what does that look like? What is a day when you're working together on creating and collaborating?
Well, we
I
all
mean,
have
I
our
guess
respective rooms, and Eddie's actually next door and VFX are upstairs. It was a bit of a Mission Impossible kind of, workshop, and
great.
we'd all have lunch together. And so, yeah, I mean, we would write kind of, I say isolation loosely because it was just us in our respective rooms, focusing on what was in front of us, and then would start the collaboration of sharing ideas. We would do emails sometimes, and sometimes we would be in the same room, and sometimes we'll
Yeah.
grab each other's work. Uh, you know, it was, it's a blessing. Me and Max have spoken about this a lot with people. COVID really standardized the remote aspect for post-production, and it's almost normal to do a whole film over Zoom with
Yeah.
and that I think McHugh just says no to all of that and wanted us all together. So that's what we did. We were together. We saw each other basically 7 days a week for a year. Um, Pretty much, it got more 7 days a week towards the end than before, but you
Nine
know,
days a week.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we would just play, and eventually everything kind of melted together.
Yeah.
It was a process that demanded so much material. If we ran into a wall, Cecile and Timmy would have so many sweets from stuff from past months and so many stems. And yeah, it was just because there was so much work and there was so much
Yeah.
productivity. It all just kind of melted together, and yeah, all of the above, really.
Cecile, you must be incredibly brilliant at filing. In
She
terms
is.
of just being able to kind of hold,
Organization.
but also like within your brain of being able to kind of to recognize all this, everything that's kind of coming in, as well as seeing the bigger picture of
That's
the
exactly it. Yeah.
film and the story. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, that's where the process that McHugh likes to go through is very unique and very interesting, and I think creatively very satisfying at the end, even if it can be quite grueling at that moment,
Yeah.
because he'll be very fortunate to have this wealth of music available. He doesn't necessarily have time to really go through every single one of them and say, I want this on this. So it comes to me to get all these suites and just suggest some ideas, try to hear this piece and think, where could this fit, and how could it fit? And even if it's a very rough outline, if at least it's got something in the core of it that could work. It's been an incredibly a rewarding process, collaborating with them, being in the same building and just saying, so I tried this on this scene, have a look, what do you think? I think at this moment it should do this instead, and then this moment. And it's truly like going back and forth. And then I was also very fortunate to have Timmery Duplat, who was music editor with me, who we had a great shortcut. She's French as well, so we say that we're the French invasion. Um, so
Secret
we kind of,
language.
Exactly. And so we have this great quick conversations
Mm,
where we'll know exactly what we mean. And so I'll say, I was thinking of using this on this scene. What do you think? And she'll say, well, I'll just try and I'll show you what it looks like just because I'm busy doing this other thing at the same time. So yeah, the teamwork was absolutely essential. It's truly it was truly a lot of work, and just being able to experiment so much is what works for McHugh. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to put into music what he has in his head and can't necessarily
mm,
express. And as soon as you find that little bit of music that he latches onto and that he really likes, that's where you have to really get into it and really find how you can refine it, find new ways of saying a similar idea but in a different way. So, for example, when he discovered when he first heard the piece of music that eventually was put on the scene when Ethan is captured by the CIA agents led by Briggs, and the whole conversation on the plane between Briggs and Ethan, which is quite a heavy and very deep scene in terms of how many ramifications are being mentioned of all this history. Just digging into that was a very long process of just experimenting with every single chord, because for McHugh, everything has to be there has to be a reason emotionally for the music to do what it's doing. It's not just music for music's sake. Um, so it's yeah, it's very, very specific and very very focused, but at the end of the day, the end result is for him to really love a piece of music is so satisfying, because you know how much work went into it, and
yeah.
how much he has listened to it and how much he has really understood every movement of it in relation to the film.
When is the live playback happening? I want the Royal Albert Hall with the film.
Yeah.
Well, Edith, we have word about it, but we can't discuss it just yet. But it was expressed that
Rumors.
there's interest in it, but I can't go beyond that. Okay, I can't do it.
Please
Kristen,
message me when that's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. Starring
Please.
Billie
Oh my
Eilish. No,
Absolutely.
I'm
God.
joking.
What have you got a favorite cue? Have you got one that I don't know what for whatever reason is kind of you hold dear from this experience, in terms of yeah, from a
I think
while.
we discussed it already a little bit, but it is the arm break moment, because I remember, and right before that, when Ethan kind of turns the tables a little bit,
Yeah.
because I remember watching, I've seen it 7 times in its full completion, which is a lot now, like with family and friends and all the premieres and the screenings. And every time when that's going on, people are just, I kind of like look around a little bit.
Yeah.
People are just so engaged at that moment, and it works so well. It just kind of explodes creatively there, and I
Yeah.
think it's just a moment where everyone can just you can enjoy the pain and the suffering. Like that's why we go to the movies, because it's just joy at watching these characters just go all out.
Alfie?
Uh, yeah, I mean, obviously, all the showstoppers, that being one of them, are have a long, great story about them, and you know, me, Cecile, Max would agree. The big cues almost felt like scoring a film in itself, just to get
Yeah.
those
Mm-hmm.
ready and approved, and they were peppered with kind of friends and family screenings and test screenings, and to prepare for those is very, very difficult too. But weirdly, one of the things I really love, the cues I really love, it's a very small moment, but it's Angela Bassett's introduction into the film. You can hear her high heels coming, and then this really simple cue with just electric violin and a snare drum, and it's so funny because that section of the film, there were parts that felt very empty and flat.
Mm.
Obviously brilliant editing and amazing music solved that, but that was one moment I was like, wow, film music can really change a vibe, and that it made that character such a badass for the rest of the
Yeah.
2 hours of the film. Yeah, that cue, I always get a kick about how cool music is in
Mm-hmm.
films.
And then you absolutely bawl your eyes out where it's hi mom.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, right. I know that's a good moment.
um, I'm so excited to hear what's next. But actually, just before we because I've kept you so much longer than I said I would. Alfie, I just wanted to quickly say congratulations on Marion.
Yes, you know,
Just
Joe and Finn, the directors of that film, text me going, "Look what Edith Bowman has said." We were both so touched that you
Hmm.
gave that film a shout out and told McHugh about it.
it
You
just
know,
really connected with me. I got to do a Q&A with the guys just around BAFTAs last year and stuff, and it's just a beautiful little story that's got a big heart and has clearly got somewhere else to go. So I'm
yes.
excited that they're
And now Kate
potentially
Blanchett is developing it. You know,
amazing.
crazy. I
Amazing.
know.
Yeah.
They
Well,
deserve
yeah.
everything they get. Those two.
It's
It's
a
amazing.
wonderful, wonderful short film. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Um, what's next apart from us all hanging out at the Royal Albert Hall for the live playback?
Yeah.
I've got
A holiday? A
uh
quiet,
w-
quiet holiday.
well, I feel like after finishing the movie and going to all the premieres, I feel like it was kind of a month of high-fiving and celebration and great
Yeah.
dinners. We did a team dinner in London, and it was such a great way to wrap up such an intense year.
Mm.
And I saw some family in Spain as well that I'd never met before. So that was really nice.
Whoa,
Yeah. Yeah, that was really special.
that's
But
awesome.
I'm back home now and I'm kind of ready to get things going again. I spoke with some directors the other day about a little documentary and then a little video game in the fall, but it's just great to have done this as a team together and look back and say, wow, that was a wild year.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just want to give a special shout out to Cecile because she really, like, without this would not be possible without her. And
Yeah.
for her to have earned the trust of McHugh and Tom, that is what allowed this process to happen. So thank you to Cecile.
Yeah. No. Here, here.
Awesome. Yeah.
Red now.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, I look forward to the next time that we can chat, whether that be collectively, individually. But huge congratulations once again. Yeah, it's such a big character in the film, and you've
Mm.
all done such a wonderful, wonderful job. So it's great to chat to you all. Thanks for your time.